and I had 275 gear ratio, and that was the fun part of it. Push the gas pedal about 1/4 inch, and it'd go 80 miles an hour.
Hey everybody, welcome back to BarryTsGarage. I've got another episode lined up here with Ed Smith, so we can have him answer some more of your questions and tell some more stories. So that's a lot of fun. Hey Ed.
Good morning.
Good morning.
A little chilly outside, a couple days after Christmas.
Yep.
That's okay. We expect that.
Yeah, we look forward to it even.
A little bit, but warmer next week.
Oh, is it going to be back warmer?
Yeah.
Okay.
I hope so.
That's really good. Well, I'm looking forward to hanging out with you a little bit again, having conversation. Yeah. It's very good.
What do we have today?
Well, today, as usual, it's a nice wide variety. Okay. But one of the videos that I made into a short that has been viewed by over 100,000 people, maybe 200,000 people. It was when we were at the Dyno, and you talked about cutting off the exhaust pipe at a certain point with the paint.
There's always
it keeps coming up. That. Yeah. And a lot of people have different ways of doing the same idea, I guess. But anyway, so here's the latest question from that. This person says, wouldn't you have to rebend the header pipes to all line up so the collector can be fitted, or just determine where to cut the collector off?
We're just cutting the collector off only.
Okay.
Because the pipe should be equal length.
Okay.
From the flange, from the cylinder head to the collector. That's why they're so bent around and curved different. And I see some people make headers, other people make headers, not myself, but other people, and what they look like a huge job to make those headers.
Yeah.
Precision. Those guys are craftsmen, better than that.
Yeah.
To make those headers, as good as they are, and I'm sure they're all equal length within a short distance.
Yeah.
Even the header pipe, size-wise, now we're going to get into NASCAR.
Okay.
And NASCAR might have, on a NASCAR motor, I don't know what size they are right now, maybe 1 7/8 for 12 inches. Then they go to a little bit bigger for another 12 inches, and then a little bit bigger than that before they get to the collector.
Really?
And sometimes the collector will be small, and then a megaphone type thing bigger. And all those pipes have got to be the equal length plus different sizes in tubing.
Really?
It all has to do with drafting. Now, NASCAR headers are something else to look at them.
Wow, that's very interesting.
But not the primary pipe is different lengths and short distances.
Yeah.
There's more than the headers. You can get a lot of horsepower out of headers if they're done right. Yeah.
So it's like the reverse of that trumpet intake that you see sometimes on an intake.
That's right.
It's the whole idea of the air movement and expanding out.
Especially if you see some NASCAR.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no, not NASCAR, but Formula One.
Oh, Formula One, yeah.
And the Ford headers are wound around like a bunch of spaghetti, but they're awesome. And the guy that made those, such a craftsman.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's really nice.
So he was exactly right, because in the question he says, isn't it most important to get each pipe the right length rather than how long?
It is, right.
And you're answering that.
Yeah.
Very, very good. This guy's name is Supernova 1969. Wonder what kind of car he has. Yeah. He says, I de-stroked a 400 with a 305 crank. Yeah. Tuned up goodness, less of a throw than a 305. 305
crank's the same as 350.
Okay.
Same crank.
Okay, so can you explain the advantage of putting a crank like that in a 400 block?
Well, that would be the same thing. It comes to 377 cubic inches.
Okay.
That's a big bore, short stroke.
Okay.
And it runs good, 7,500, $8,000.
Wow.
Yeah, it has a lot of torque. I have 2 sets of pistons over here right now, pistons and rods.
Okay.
With 12.5-to-1 pistons with that combination.
Okay.
So we would run that in our dirt track cars.
Okay. So that's a proven formula then.
Yes, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Excellent. Well, let's just talk about de-stroking just as a general subject, because that's kind of a follow-up thing. I guess you can de-stroke. There are a lot of engines. I guess there's Ford engines and other engines that can be de-stroked like that.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Yeah. Are there any others that come to your mind that are?
Well, one of them that comes to mind is just a little bit, not necessarily de-stroked. One of them was kind of weird. Some time ago, the guy had brought it to me off. He had it on our little Cobra car, Ford Cobra.
Okay.
Not original, but after a plastic car.
Yep.
And anyways, he had this 302 Ford motor in it, and he had stroked the crankshaft, offset ground it to make it longer stroke. He put Chevrolet pistons in it, then with that wrist pin and the angle, and he used Ford Escort connecting rods
Whoa.
of a Ford 4-cylinder. And that thing was extremely fast on the street
Huh.
for that little Ford Cobra motor in the 302. So
Yeah.
it came up to maybe 348 cubic inches or a little bit more.
Uh-huh.
But it would only last because they offset that crankshaft and makes it real weak in the web.
Okay.
Shortly after that, they could only run so long, it'll break the crankshaft because
Okay.
it's so weak in a Ford crank. Ford cranks are a little weak anyways.
Okay.
They're
So
a
you have
little
to be
bit weak
careful.
in the castings and the webbings and stuff between one and the other. So
Oh, okay. So you got to be careful with those.
Yeah.
Whenever I put a motor together and needed to move the crank, I'd tap it with a soft Babbitt bearing hammer.
it's like when we assemble a motor, a lot of times, if it don't, we put a crankshaft in a block
Yep.
and then put it in as nice as you can, clean everything spotless, and deburr the things. We deburr the mains, the main caps and stuff like this, the little edges.
Mm-hmm.
You see our mechanics, so they would deburr them with a little grinder and blow them all off and clean them again, and then clean the engine and put the crank and the bearings in there and everything else. If it don't turn right, we may take a bigger hammer, hit on the crankshaft counterweights
Oh.
all the way down and rotate the crankshaft, and that centers the main bearings in the block.
Okay.
So not necessarily they fit perfect, but if you just take a hammer, no connecting rods or pistons on it, it's the crank only, and just turn up and hit the counterweight. So it's actually seating the bearing a little bit in the block, and it turns much better.
Okay. So when it just lands in place, it's not
When you
necessarily
put the
right.
bearings in this one here, that, a little bit that way, a little bit this way, a little bit that way, and then you put the bearings in the caps, you put them on there and tighten them down, torque them down, and then they're not quite seated like that. But just take a big hammer, small sledgehammer, and just pound them a little bit. Don't be afraid you're not going to break anything.
Yep.
Pound the crank down, it seats the bearings up, it turns much better, and you're ready to go.
Okay.
Then you turn on and check them, take them off and check them with your Plastigage then too,
Okay.
but not before.
Okay. Make
Because
sure
you get
they're
a bad
seated
reading.
first.
It's the only correct way to get it.
Okay. Now that hammer, is that a soft blow hammer or
No,
something?
no, we just use a regular hammer. Don't beat it up to death.
Yeah,
You could
okay.
use a brass hammer if you wanted to, if you had a bigger one.
Uh-huh.
You need to shake the crank a little bit.
Okay. So it needs a little
A
vibration.
little vibration, yeah.
Okay.
And
I-
much better then.
I hear
Then you
you.
could check the bearing. But if you don't do that and you put your Plastigage, you won't get a correct reading.
I see. Okay.
That's just a finer tune to
Yeah.
assemble that motor.
We learned again. Okay, next question. When you were talking about the Chrysler fluid drive, if you remember that, we talked about that some time back. He said, sounds a lot like the so-called ClutchGlide mod. The old dragster guys would take a mechanical clutch and hook it up to a 2-speed Powerglide. No torque converter, just let it run a manual body shift, and then you dig out the stoplight with the mechanical clutch.
That's right. Yeah, it's called a ClutchFlite.
Okay.
The first one I had was a Dodge ClutchFlite.
Okay.
I had a Dodge transmission behind a Chevy motor.
Okay.
And that was a little Anglia. And it
Uh-huh.
was fuel injected, really a fast car.
Okay.
And we had a ClutchFlite behind that.
All right. How
And
about a
then
manual clutch with a Powerglide?
That's with the Powerglide. Now, a manual clutch now, Powerglide wasn't a good idea because you didn't have low gear.
Okay.
So it was okay for a while, but the Powerglide, the original Powerglide wouldn't handle that. It was
Interesting.
pretty weak transmission. The input shaft wasn't very big and the output shaft wasn't very big either. And so right now we have in our oval track cars is the same thing. And then some of our Powerglides we do in dirt tracks sometimes. We have a Spud, which is a piece of pipe hooked to the flywheel, no torque converter. Then it just runs the front pump. Right there, no torque converter.
Oh, that's all it's doing.
It's in gear. So you can put it in neutral. For a while, we had a hydraulic valve that ran the pressure. So you had a manual valve. It wouldn't put any oil pressure in the transmission, even though the front pump's working.
Okay.
You tapped it and put hoses on it. You had a manual valve, and you put the manual valve, it takes right off.
Huh.
And you shut the pressure off the front pump, then the car would stop. Then you could put it in reverse and go the other way. So you had two different things. A hydraulic manual valve for a clutch, hydraulic, and then your shifter, whatever gear you want to be into.
Uh-huh.
So lately, it's got a little tube on a Powerglide that goes to the servo.
Mm-hmm.
So now, instead of doing that manual valve, we drill a little hole in that manual pipe, that little 1/4-inch pipe that goes to servo.
Okay.
So it bypasses all the oil while the motor's running idle. If you rev it up, then the oil thing with
pressure
that
builds?
small hole in there will overcome that, and the car takes right off without this manual valve.
Huh.
So we're kind of cheating. We're bleeding that oil off that little pipe that goes to the servo.
Okay.
That's in low gear. So then if he has a bigger motor, we could drill the hole out just a little bit bigger, just a little bit, and still get idle and in gear and pull up on the trailer or back it off or something. But then once you get going, you're going to high gear all the time.
Right.
So you're right, and that eliminates that pipe.
I see.
So you got the full pressure in high gear just like you would if you had a torque converter.
Huh.
Yeah, that's our new way of doing it.
Okay.
So
Here we go. We're learning again. Yeah. Thank you, Ed. Who was it that built an engine block by stacking a bunch of index steel plates with water and oil channels drilled in the plates and then stuck it into a furnace and forged it? Or then machined it? Have you heard anything like that? I haven't.
Must have been some foreign country. Germany. Germans could make anything out of a tin can.
Yeah.
They could take a 50-gallon barrels and make a school bus. No problem at all.
Right. They would just form it and make it happen.
They would do it, whatever.
Yeah.
That's what they were always known for.
Yeah.
Our friends in World War I or II or whatever it was, he says those Germans could make anything out of anything.
Yeah. It's so easy to overcam a big or small block Mopar. They almost always have low compression.
Not necessarily. You can come close, but most of it's trial and error. There's so many factors in that. How heavy the car is, the gear ratio, and the gear ratio in the transmission, and how big the motor is, the cubic inches, and how much the pistons and rods and crankshaft weigh. All that, compression ratio, and the carburation, and it goes back to the exhaust system, how big it is, how long it is, all kinds of, there's a bunch of variants. And
so many variables.
It's almost impossible. You can get close,
yeah,
but that's why it takes a long time to get a particular person. I'm amazed at sometimes, talking about Mopar there, I'm amazed at sometimes at the drag races that the guy takes a little Dodge Aspen or something with a 318 motor and picks the front wheels off the ground and runs so fast with a set of 10-inch slicks or something. He's a fantastic guy. But he knows everything about that car.
Yeah.
He's already had it for 20 years.
He's
got all the bugs out of it.
Yeah.
You just don't make that first time out of the box. So if that answers this question a little bit, and that's any kind of Dodge or any kind of car.
Yeah.
It takes a long, long time to get trial and error to get all that stuff if you have enough money to do it.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. So it's not just, and I guess someone like you with experience, and if you build a lot of engines that are similar, you start to have kind of a data bank in your head.
We like
don't
similar.
You? Yeah.
Because our 454s, we do a lot of 350s. We have a couple down at the dyno shop right now. And we know what they're going to put out really close because we already did. But the ones that we have down in the dyno shop right now, we've changed something on them. They put aluminum heads on with bigger valves and different carburation on it or something. And that's why we sent it down there and had it dyno. And we know what that one puts out again for our production motors.
Right.
And one will be just almost identical to the other one. So we know what we're doing.
Right.
As far as advertising and selling motors.
Right.
Yeah, don't do any good for us to change a bunch of things on them and not know what.
Then you don't know which variable did what.
No idea what we did right or what we did wrong.
Right.
Yeah.
Better to
we use the dyno a lot.
Yeah. Good old Robert Klein.
Robert Klein, yeah.
Sometimes a small cam can be better, give you bigger compression.
Yes.
Okay.
Without a doubt, yeah. Because it closed the valves.
Right.
Small camshaft duration. The valves are closed and the piston's still coming up.
Right.
So it's got a lot more. And anytime you have a large compression or large duration, the valve is still half open and the piston is almost to the top.
Right.
And that usually works with high RPMs, not low RPMs.
Okay.
So a stock camshaft, yes. That's why sometimes if the guy puts a stock camshaft on big pistons, he'll have 300 pounds compression and blow the spark plug guts right out of the spark plug. And it won't start either.
Right.
It'll break the starter before it starts.
Yeah.
So that's all,
there's always a limit.
It's okay.
Yeah.
But not a lot.
Right.
That's why we advanced the camshaft on some stock motors. And it runs that duration ahead, and the valve's closed, and the piston's still coming up or going down.
Right.
And we like that.
Yeah, that's the way to do it. Okay, now this is about your the video not too long ago. Charles says, my dad ran Moonshine.
Good. 90 proof?
I don't know.
This must be from Kentucky. Maybe Murfreesboro, Tennessee?
I don't know. I don't know if he even's going to fess up where.
Okay.
Back in the late 40s, after the war, in a 1940 Ford, and then a 49 Merc, and then a 53 Merc. So it sounds like some flathead action there.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
I remember hearing him telling his friends about running Hemi heads on his flatheads. Since then, I heard a story about Ford designing and building some Hemi heads for flatheads, and then the war started and they never went back to it.
Ardun heads.
Ardun, right.
Ardun heads. That's the only ones that I know. But there's some weird stuff were made in those days, like the Ardun people, and they only made a few sets of those. I think some people copied them and did a thing. And I've never owned a set of those. I have a couple of friends that have them.
Yep.
I think Steve has a set.
Yes, he does.
Flatheads, yeah.
Yep.
And I'd like to put them together sometime and run them. And we probably have the opportunity to do that one of these days.
Yeah, we should.
Yeah, we should. So anyways, that was a good thing, yeah. But I'm not sure if he had that Mercury loaded all down with as much stuff they can make a profit. That's a little heavy there and a little shaking around. A little bit dangerous if he gets going very fast. But this is for sure the policeman didn't have near as fast as cars he had.
Right.
So that's his advantage.
Yes.
I hope.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Probably, yeah.
I think by 53 Mercury, that was about the biggest flathead they made, isn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. And I'm not sure it would be good to run those hardened heads down a dirt road real fast.
Are they a little bit delicate?
I don't know. It made a good air cleaner anyways. We'll just have a little fun here.
Right.
I hope he made a lot of money, and I guess he did.
Yeah, apparently. Yeah. That's very interesting. So I guess he's talking about trying to figure out what you need by pressurizing the system and watching it come out of the bottom of the block. Do you ever do that?
No.
Never done that.
I don't know how you can do that. I have no idea.
Okay.
What the thing, but the only thing it does is you need to have the right oil pump, and you can't have too big an oil pan, because the more you have that oil pan, more oil you have in the pan, the more the oil is going to go down there in that pan and cool off and come back, cooler oil back in the engine, and that's all good. So sometimes you just have a deep pan or a lot of oil in the pan, like a boat.
Yeah.
Some of our boat pans hold 10 quarts.
Right.
And basically it was a lot of oil in there, so it keeps the oil cooler, cold. It's not cooler than running the 4 quarts around and around the motor, and the oil gets hot.
Do you recommend any of these aftermarket oil pans that have fins in them to help, get more cooling, air cooling?
I don't think they have that. There wouldn't be a fan.
Not a fan. No, I'm just finned.
A fin on the outside of the pan?
Yeah.
I don't, somewhat.
Okay.
Yeah.
If there's room, I guess.
Yeah, if there's room or something, but that's rare for to have somebody do that. I know there's some pans, transmission pans, that were made out of some company in Denver, I think it was, that had round pipes in them. And I have a pan laying over here.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to get that pan, look at it. But it has fins in the transmission pan.
Okay.
In a deep pan. So the air would go through that tubes.
Okay.
Yeah, open tubes. So there's airflow through the oil pan like a radiator.
Really?
And kept the pan. You want me to get that pan?
Sure, let's get it.
So then here's a pan that's got tubes in it.
On
the bottom of the pan.
Right.
So I think this pan was made by a company in Denver, and they would have that. So the fins went through the oil, air would go through here and keep the pan.
Right.
Because it's important to keep the transmission oil cool.
Right.
And some places that probably wasn't necessary to have a transmission cooler, like in a radiator or something.
Right.
But this is a pan that's,
wow.
Now this could be, you could put these in a motor oil pan too.
Right. Yeah.
It would take up, and this is a deep pan. It's deeper than stock. So yeah.
Wow, I've never seen
quite a heavy pan. Yeah,
Wow.
Yeah, that's what they were made of.
Huh. Is that just steel? It's not aluminum.
It's a steel, yeah. It's a steel pan, so they could weld it.
Huh.
They welded all the, like furnace brakes in a radiator or something like
right.
that. Yeah.
Huh.
It says on the thing here, I think, cool pan. transmission cool pan. It tells the brand over here.
Huh.
Yeah, you could buy that.
That's really cool.
So if that helps answer his questions about fans in a pan.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. How does compression affect power on a flathead? I've heard raising it doesn't do as much as a small block Chevy.
It's the same. The only thing it's hard to get compression raised in a flathead.
Okay.
It's just a lot of problems.
Okay.
Because you end up with the chamber in a flathead. It's a flathead for it, even an aluminum head. If you close the chamber, the valves go up in that chamber, in the same chamber. If you start lowering that compression, the chamber volume, you can't really do that with the camshaft where the valves hit the head then, or hit up in that pocket.
Right.
So it's almost impossible to raise the compression in a flathead Ford.
I see. And it also occurs to me that if you bring down that void area in the top of the head to make it smaller, I don't know how airflow would work either. If
That's
there's less
right.
room.
Yeah. But even though the airflow, it's okay with the airflow.
Okay.
We're not concerned with that.
Okay.
It's the piston, the valves hitting the head.
Right. Okay.
Maybe like putting a thinner head gasket on.
Yeah.
Flathead tied to compression, and the valves are hit the head.
Okay. Well, I'm thinking on an overhead valve engine, I get it, but with the valves offset to the side on a flathead, I guess the valves just go up into.
They go up into that head.
Into that head,
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
So
the
it's
head
hard
has
to
to
lower
stay
that.
there. Right.
Yeah, it's hard to lower that.
Right.
Almost impossible.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I
So
don't know if and you can't hardly put a dome on the piston because that's the dome in the cylinder head matches the piston almost perfectly anyways.
Okay. So with
it's all around the dome, yeah.
So it sounds like one of the only ways to raise compression properly would be a different crank throw.
Crank would be a longer stroke.
Yeah.
Yes. And a longer stroke, you get more volume to compress. That's exactly right.
Okay.
You can gain a little bit, but it's hard to gain any kind of compression on a flathead.
Okay. Because I'm imagining I've not had them apart. You're the one that builds them. But I imagine there's not that much extra room in the block for a much bigger crank.
No, the cranks are all working. You don't have to machine a block to get a bigger crank.
Okay.
They have 4 1/8 crank. Mercury crank's 4-inch. They have a 4 1/8, and that's a common crank for a flathead.
Okay.
And I scatter cat makes one of those crankshafts, and the rods miss everything without any problems.
Okay. So you can get a little bit that way.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you ask Ed to please talk more about the Cadillac 500, 472, and 425? I think people have just wanted, boy, I wish I could have that Chevy truck that Ed built with the 500 Cadillac motor in it. That had to be wonderful.
It was so much fun because they are, and they still quiz me about that. Sometimes they question because the GM people said that like the Cadillac 500 put out more horsepower than any other one at a certain RPMs.
Okay.
Not like the 454 Chevy, they're 502, and they're not production motors. They weren't. This 500 Cadillac motor was in a horse and ambulances and Cadillacs and limousines.
Right.
Just an everyday driver.
Well, to some extent, isn't it the no substitute for cubic inches? I mean, it's just
right,
big.
Yeah. And then if you took a 500 and overhauled it and bored it 60 over or something, you may have 520 cubic inches or something like that, 60 over. And it was always so much fun with a stock camshaft.
Okay.
Yeah. And I've seen one guy used to be in Albuquerque, and I think he moved to Florida, and now has that aluminum heads for 500.
Okay.
Intake manifolds and stuff. I remember one time he came out here with an Eldorado Cadillac out the Beeline Dragway, this motor in it and stuff, and he ran with their Hemi motors.
Did he really?
Yeah, he absolutely did. He ran 990 and 135 miles an hour. Wow. Yeah, he did.
Okay.
And a Cadillac motor.
So you can get high performance out of those.
He was racing the guy we raced against us.
Okay.
With our 990 cars with the Chrysler, Hemi motor and the CUDA all lightened up and everything. Mm-hmm. And that's what we were running. But he was right there with us and was competitive.
Okay. And I guess another maybe misnomer or wrong thinking is that they were too heavy. I'm not sure how much heavier they were.
They weren't as heavy as a Cadillac, or they weren't as heavy as the motor as a Hemi motor.
Okay, right.
Hemi motor is probably the heaviest motor they ever made.
Okay.
Because it's got so much nickel in the crank.
Okay.
And the heads are extremely heavy. And this guy with the Cadillac had aluminum heads.
Right.
I think he makes aluminum heads for it, and a camshaft, and I don't know what all it was about that thing. But even our stock motor, the one I had I put it in an 82 Chevy pickup truck, and it just spun the wheels and I had 275 gear ratio, and that was the fun part of it. You push the gas pedal about a quarter inch, and it'd go 80 miles an hour. And so smooth. They were balanced so perfect motor because they didn't want the limousine or anything it came out of to vibrate at all. It was such an awesome motor. We have a couple over here now in the shop.
Do you have okay?
Yeah, they're kind of rare now.
Yeah, I was going to say, some people say it's impossible to find them now.
Yeah, we have a couple of them. They're around.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, you see, you did talk about it just now. That's awesome.
And that car, the Cadillac, liked timing.
Okay.
Yeah, it really liked timing. So I'd like to set the timing at 10 degrees to start it, and immediately moved up to 15. And made double the horsepower almost. It was crazy.
What was the stock timing on it?
Well, 6 or 8 or something like that. So it would start easy.
Mm-hmm.
But and if you played with it a little bit, it would and they said change the weights in the distributor, so it advances quicker. They really liked that. Even though it's a stock motor, it's smooth as ever, idle like nothing.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
Huh.
Fun.
Very good, Ed. That's good. Back in the 70s, I knew 2 broke brothers. They were cheap, but they raced E-altered car.
E-altered, okay.
E-altered with a 6-cylinder Chevy.
Okay.
And they cut, this is bizarre, they cut 2 Boss 302 heads in half and welded them back together to make them fit the block.
They put them on a 300 Ford 6.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 6-cylinder. Crane ground a cam for them, and they ran pretty hard, he says. So I guess there's a lot of different ways to do things.
All kinds of ways to do it. And just like right now, I think in the barn somewhere in the garage up north, my friend has an E-altered, and he runs a 4-cylinder Mercury outboard motor, and it's actually half a 460.
Oh, really?
Yes, and it's a crazy motor. But anyways, there's a long story about this thing then. So they end up, the cylinder head they used on it was an aluminum 460 Ford head.
Okay.
And then they put the carburetor on one side and run Weber carburetors on it, or fuel injection, and exhaust out the other side. Then they took this motor and ground off the crankshaft, offset ground it. Then they put a 1-inch block on top of the block.
Okay.
Yeah. So they took this machine, and that motor actually looks like a Vega motor with the cylinder walls look like soup cans sticking out of the middle of a block. Nothing held them.
Okay.
Except the head gasket. So they CNC'd around that block and CNC'd around the water chambers and added a 1-inch square steel plate on top of the cylinder walls.
Okay.
Then put longer sleeves in it. And made the stroke that much longer.
Wow.
Then put this aluminum 460 head on it, which had 1/2-inch head bolts. And they put it all on there, and then offset the ground. Ended up instead of a half a 460, that would be 230 cubic inches.
Right.
They ended up with about 270 cubic inches of a 4-cylinder, and put in this E-altered automatic. Put an automatic transmission behind it. It's a little Fiat body, and then it has a little T-bucket grill on it. I don't think Dean Carter has it. And I think the first time he ran the car, he got best engineering at one of the national races.
No way.
Maybe he did that a couple times. It set national record by maybe a couple seconds and stuff. Then we looked into that and made some information, looked around, and come to find out the guy's in Florida.
Okay.
With the sand buggies, with the big tall tractor tires, and they swung through the swamps.
Oh, the swamp buggies.
Swamp buggies?
Yeah.
Had that same conversion that somebody did down in Florida, and we didn't even know anything about them.
Okay. Wow.
But they have the same things.
So
it was really interesting. But that car is still up here in the garage, and he could race it anytime he wanted to, I think.
Wow. Hey, while we're talking about, can you explain to people who don't know what E-altered, what that class is about?
Well, it's a 4-cylinder class.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to alter the 4-cylinder.
There's some other ones below that even. I knew right away it was a 6-cylinder class. And then I think they race them in 6-cylinder standard. I don't know exactly the rules right now. I don't keep up with them.
Yeah.
But maybe it's F-altered, stick, and F-altered automatic.
Okay.
put you in a different class, and then it's all categories and races and competition eliminator
Okay.
against the faster cars, but they give them a big long head start.
Yeah.
Bracket racing is what it is. Yeah.
All right.
So.
Now, to finish up, this is a little side thing. We have had a couple people ask for us to do a special video about the Sour 6 because you did a lot of racing in a certain class and did very well with that Falcon, right?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that want to hear some specific stories on that. Do you think you'd be game to do that sometime? You have some pictures and memorabilia from that?
I have some pictures of it, yeah, and some thoughts because I rebuilt the motor.
Okay.
And transmission. We build all that stuff in the rear end and things like this. And the headers were a big deal about that.
Okay. And how many years did you have that car? Did you race it?
Probably we raced that car for maybe 20 years.
Wow.
The number. First of all, we had a little early car, a little yellow car.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a bunch of front suspension on that and oil pan and different things. It was all automatic transmission cars.
Okay.
And gear ratios and different things about that. And then we updated it to that 64.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the car, was a blue and white car.
Uh-huh.
And that's the one I sold it somewhere in Tucson.
Okay.
I seen it a year later and it was the same car.
Okay.
I hadn't done anything to it besides just race it.
Uh-huh.
But I don't know where the car is at now. Today.
Yeah. Okay. We'll have to dig into that sometime.
Yeah, it was quite
as
a
a
car.
separate
And
thing.
we did different things on it.
Yeah.
Of course, we held the national record 144, 170, and the 200 class. All those three of those engines, we held the class record on all those.
You held the record for all those classes?
3 engine classes.
Yeah. So those are engine sizes, 144, 170.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah. And you held those records for a while, didn't you?
We still probably, I don't know if
Maybe they're still there.
Maybe still, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Ed, thank you for sharing some more of your knowledge.
Okay, good.
This is really good. We'll do some more of these soon.
Okay, good.
It's a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun.
And thank you for sending your comments. Thank you for liking our videos and subscribing. Those are all awesome things. Ed and I really appreciate you coming along and all your kind words. You get a lot of compliments for Ed, and he deserves them.
Yeah,
Very good. Thank you, Ed.